Thank you for tuning in to Koppen with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen. We're here with comic Alysia Hush. Alysia Hush, how the hell are you?
I'm good, Brian. How are you?
I'm so good, and thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful non-tropical storm day. The tropical storm was yesterday, and I got caught in it.
What tropical storm? Where are you?
Well, I'm in New York City, and they said that there was a tropical storm yesterday, but all I know is that the heavens opened up and everything got wet, and I don't think umbrellas really work.
Oh no, I'm in Texas, so I did
Okay.
not know any of that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was like after the fact, I heard there was a tropical storm, and I was like, yeah, that checks out because I got super wet. Now, yeah, let people know where they can find you doing online comedy while you're in Texas because you're normally in New York.
Yes, I am based in New York. Yeah, I post all of the information on my website, upcoming shows, which I think is just www.alysiahush.com. I
Yeah.
think something like that.
Yeah, I have you here, and I follow you on Twitter and Instagram, and you're Alysia Hush, and it's Alysia, and that's on Twitter, and then you're Alysia_Hush on Instagram as well.
Yeah, pretty straightforward marketing technique.
Yeah. As long as we know how to spell your name, and I think I spelled it wrong in my own records, and it was a bear trying to find it. But once I know how to spell, man, you're easy to
It
find.
was there. Yeah. You were
And then
like, who is this nobody I'm having on my podcast?
how did I find her? Oh no, yeah, I just spelled back when I was spelling correctly. I found you pretty easily. And then it sounds like you're jumping on other people's shows while you're in Texas, and all that can be found on your website. You've been kind of doing Zoom, like other people's Zoom shows or Instagram Live.
Yeah, I've been doing. Yeah, I did an Instagram live earlier this week. That was really fun. Um, I've been doing a lot of Zoom shows. I think a lot of people are in the same boat as me. But I heard that some outdoor shows are reopening, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I see pictures. It's just amazing to see where, there once was no comedy. Now there is comedy galore in park.
yeah. It's great. I hope it I hope it stays that way.
Yeah. Yeah, because at least it's safe for everybody involved. But I think certain comics have complained about, well, there's in a park there's ambient noise that you really can't ignore. Or there was even an open mic in Washington Square Park that I heard about that sounded pretty awesome. Like, who thought you could do an open mic in Washington Square Park?
Yeah, I've heard it. I think it sounds really great, especially considering that we have had almost no comedy, live comedy, really, in 3 or 4 months. And then I do hear that people, some of the circumstances for outdoor shows are less than great. But I'm like, there's so many things that could go wrong with an indoor show. You could still get heckled. Somebody could still drop a glass.
Yeah.
If you ever do comedy in a weird place, like, have you ever been hired to do comedy for children? It's terrible. You know what I mean? Like,
Outdoor shows, I do it for kids. It's awful.
yeah. Are you kidding? Yeah. Or like, if you do comedy you get like French tourists, and French people are very sad, and you're like, well, you know, whatever.
So it sounds like you're doing those shows, but what we're going to talk about real quick is we're going to talk about Greek mythology and some other, Greek mythology and how it perhaps informs things like Lifetime movies and Star Wars. So what can you tell us about your love for Greek mythology? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What Greek gods and goddesses are you into, and which ones are dog shit and they should be cut? They should be cut from the next Marvel franchise.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you asked that question because I think that for people who don't know a lot about Greek mythology, one of the most popular figures is probably Zeus,
Yeah.
Hercules and Zeus is a real asshole. Um, he I don't think he's ever had consensual sex in Greek mythology a single time. Even his wife Hera, he had to like turn himself into her favorite animal in order to get her to even come close to him.
I love it. It's like twin swapping. It's like, well, you won't have sex with me, but you have sex with my twin. So just let me wear his favorite outfit.
Yeah. Yeah. He really sucks. He's a real nightmare of a guy. Not a good guy.
Was there a
He's
lot of was there a lot of sex? Like these things to me were taught in school just as things. Like where were these things written down? Where were they kind of passed along in verbal form to the point they're written down in textbooks as legends or something, or were they written down in something that I can go read? And was there a lot of sex in that stuff?
Yeah, there is. It's loads of. That's like it's like the dark and light of it. Is that like a lot of for a lot of where I got it was from like the Iliad and Homer, the Odyssey. But it's like it's crazy because there's loads of sex. There's loads of sex, and it's all kinds of sex. Like for the most part, like homosexuality was not taboo. It was very common for in Greek and Roman times, and therefore in their mythology, for people to have lovers of the same sex, just because it was sex and it could be good either way. So it was like, well,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you be having it? But then on the flip side, it's like, they also had these like really great, amazing female goddesses, like the goddess of war and Artemis, goddess of the hunt, there was a queen of the underworld, like really great stuff, but tons of rape, just so much rape.
So it's like is it like a Game of Thrones thing, and that's how it got so popular? I meant to read the Iliad and the Odyssey, but they're a little bit too long. If I knew they were chock full of porn, maybe I would have read them.
Yeah. It really, and you're gonna have to like really coat your stomach though, because there's also a lot of like sex with animals. So if you're like, oh, this is gonna be a really great summer read, it's just not. You know what I mean? It's
Unless unless you're into that sort of thing. And I mean, is Game of Thrones kind of like that? Is that why Game of Thrones was they just took the Iliad and the Odyssey and made it for cable?
I think there's like the same sort of appeal in the sense that it's like gritty. It's like you like it, but it's terrible. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, nothing that these characters do is something that I would want to do, but I would love to watch it in the safety of my own snuggie.
I don't want some god coming up and raping me, but on the screen, maybe.
Yeah, but more hopes and prayers to her. It's crazy. It's definitely not something that I've definitely partaken in some very light hallucinogenic substances, and then Googled Greek mythology, and I would not recommend that you do that. I would really not, because you will see it every night when you go to sleep for a week.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny, because I thought you were going in a different direction. You were talking about having sex with animals, and then you used the words, I also dabbled in some light, and I thought that was going somewhere else.
I personally have never, and if I did, I don't think here would be where I shared. But,
but you were on substances. You were high. You were fine.
Yeah.
And then is any of this? I mean, it sounds like this pretty much was made into Game of Thrones. But is there anything from the Greek mythology, like good and evil and justice and injustice, that made its way into your interest in either Star Wars or, better yet, the Lifetime movies?
I think the interesting thing about Greek mythology specifically is there really is not very much like justice and justice. It's all just like the gods are gods and they fuck with you because they are gods and that's what they do. So it's all very like matter of fact. And if you are not a god, you're pretty much almost fucked from the beginning, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Be ready for rape if you're not a god.
Yeah, exactly. Lifetime movies, there's a ton of rape in Lifetime movies. What I'd say, if there is a connection between mythology and Lifetime, it's that none of them seem realistic in any capacity.
I know, like I was like, my mother would watch them and I would overhear them and they sounded like the worst. Like, why is my Christian loving mother like listening to this vicious shit? And she was like, it's a Lifetime movie. And I'm like, well, when does it get nice? And I think that happens at the end. And so you pretty much have vicious bullshit for 95% of the time, and there's a moral at the end.
Yeah, it's so crazy because it will be like an hour and 45 minutes of like teen prostitution rings and then somehow a happy ending. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, well, what? I'm so worried that like there's going to be like a huge like event like the asteroid of sorts, and that civilization like decades from now is going to somehow find Lifetime movies and think that that's the society
They
that
left
we
a
live
time.
in.
They left a time capsule for us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. This and then think that maybe this is how we should treat cheerleaders. You know what I mean? I'm like, why do they all have to be cheerleaders?
But that's so funny that like if kids had only listened to the first 95% of that, they would have turned out awful. And it's just
Right.
like yeah, why are the people watching that? Is it because if you're a lifetime target like a mother or something, you really still want that pulpy stuff, maybe without the curse words in case your kids walk in, and then to kind of cleanse the stigma of all that awful shit you just watched. There's a moral at the end. It almost justifies you watching awful shit.
It's just I would love to write a Lifetime movie because I feel like there's no rules.
just
You
like just
can
like the gods, as you say.
Yeah. You can do anything you want. You can introduce an alien 2 hours into the movie and it's fine.
As long as they go to therapy at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And they're all like, it's definitely targets a female demographic because in all of them, women are the main characters. And they're always either women are the villain, absolutely, or women are the victim, absolutely. And there doesn't really seem to be any woman who's just like, yeah, I'm a complex person. I've had life experiences that quantify both of those things.
Yeah, so I mean, and I guess that you're saying like, maybe it's not really a reflection of women unless you take it to the extreme. Like women as well as men are highly nuanced, and they might flip from villainry to victim to victor in 1 second right after the other.
And yeah, and all of them are cheerleaders, regardless of what. It's really insane. I tried to Google it once how many Lifetime movies had something to do with cheer squads, and the internet was like, I'm gonna need to get back to you.
And is it because it's kind of the extreme, like, the most popular clique at school is allegedly cheerleaders, and so you pick that one. They're always picking the exemplar, the extreme.
Yeah, I think yeah, and maybe in like, and it's like I think sometimes um with like especially like under I don't want to be rude to the writers of these films,
Oh,
but
please do.
it's like, you know how sometimes people of either men or women that don't have much interaction with the opposite sex have very specific ideas about the opposite sex, right? It's like sometimes men are like, oh, cheerleaders, they definitely all behave like this. And that's what
Yes.
they think of when they think of women. They're like cheerleaders. And like sometimes women who don't, you know, interact with men a lot, sometimes they could be like, men, I think of, you know, Hercules or something like that, or a romance novel hero.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think you've met many people who wrote this.
It's written by sheltered people who immediately became writers right out of Harvard.
Yeah, either that or it's written by sixth graders who are like, how do we get these cheerleaders to talk to us? We put them in a movie.
I fucking love that. Now, and light years from there literally is Star Wars, and there's probably, I guess it's not like the Greek gods in any sense in that there's good and evil, but I suppose it could be like Lifetime movies in that there's extremes. There's, Darth Vader is extremely evil, and Luke is
Yeah.
extremely good and or pussy.
Yeah. See, I don't think Luke's a pussy. I have a slightly controversial Star Wars opinion because
Good.
I think Yoda is an idiot. I am not a fan of Yoda at all.
Is he
I
just
think
spouting fortune cookie wisdom or what?
yeah, well, I like the way that he talks. I think that's very fun. I think it's fun. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But I think he gives bad advice. I think him running around making Luke carry him is probably footage that I didn't need in the 3 hour long film. I think that I'm like, what didn't what ended up on the floor that made it into the movie? I'm like, he
But
didn't do anything.
yeah, what's some of the wisdom that got spouted by Yoda that was not very wise?
Oh, just like when when he's like, he tells Luke, oh, you have to kill your father. You have to do it. You just have to do it. And Luke's like, I'm not going to do it. And Yoda's like, well, then I guess we're doomed. And Luke doesn't do it. And Darth ends up saving him. I'm like, well, if he had listened to Yoda, who knows where we have been? And then he gives Anakin bad advice too. I'm like, this guy sucks.
Yeah, what did he say to Anakin? I forgot.
He tells Anakin, like, Anakin goes to him about being torn because he wants to be with Padme because he loves Padme and he's afraid of losing Padme as he lost his mom. And Yoda's like, well, people die. You can't mourn them because they don't belong to us, which is crazy advice it's just psychotic advice to give to somebody who's like, hey, I'm in pain right now. And he's like, well, just ignore it.
And what advice would you give to Luke and Anakin in those
I
situations?
probably listen. It's hard to say if I would ever advise somebody to kill their father. It's very hard to say.
But you would be more nuanced in your approach. You wouldn't be like, well, if you don't, we're doomed. You'd give some good reasons. You'd have a PowerPoint.
Yeah, I would be like, you know what? It wouldn't just be an off the cuff thing, that's for sure. Because Luke is like, what should I do? And he's like, well, kill your father. I think I would be like, well, maybe we think about it.
And then Anakin.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I think honestly, Anakin has like the most humanizing experience in the whole movie franchise, I think, because he goes from being like really good to losing everything really bad and then is brought back by love because Luke loves him and then reawakens his humanity. And then everybody shits on him because he's Darth Vader, and Darth Vader is absolutely awful.
Yeah.
I'm not condoning anything that he did, but then people love Yoda, and I'm like, that guy probably killed way more people. Look at the way he behaved when
You're like, that guy's the worst.
Love doesn't exist. I'm like, that's a guy that could definitely kill somebody, no question.
And now he just has other people do it. Do you think Anakin is, with the bad shit that happens to him, and the good shit, the fact that he's, we find out he's loved by Luke or whomever. Like, do we think that he's a Lifetime movie that Alysia Hush can make?
Luke, ooh, that, yeah. So the only reason why it wouldn't fit into a Lifetime movie is because he is a developed character. It's because he has a genuine character arc.
And that's Luke you're talking about.
Yeah, it's because he is multi-dimensional.
That's so funny. They've had a series to develop him so he couldn't be made flat, made 2D for the screen. Yeah.
If you put Luke into a Lifetime movie, all of the rest of you'll be like, wait, were these other characters cardboard the whole time? Because he would just be walking around set and you'd be like, wait a minute, none of those people are real.
And Anakin, the same thing. Like, because he was made human through the series, you think that he'd be too three-dimensional to survive in a Lifetime movie?
Yeah, I do. I think I think that he would really go crazy on the how he really fucks up that village where he finds his mom.
Yeah.
I think that would be the set of a Lifetime movie if he got onto it. He'd be, and not out of rage, but out of like, I'm doing all of you a favor, and the viewers can thank me later.
Or he'd be taken advantage of by a teenage prostitution ring.
Yeah. Actually, I could really see that storyline for him, to be honest.
Anakin and the prostitute.
Yeah.
And is any of these kind of themes, either being human or kind of a two-dimensional character making its way into Alysia Hush's stand-up act?
Yeah, Anakin, no. I did a podcast once specifically about Star Wars, and a few people reached out and they were like, oh, cool, do you have like Star Wars material? And I was like, no.
What would that be? Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, also the trilogy, the newest trilogy was still out. So I was like, I could see how it's like very like pop culture relevant now.
Yeah.
But then you get in trouble with like, oh, I didn't know that Ben Solo dies. You're like, well,
That's a
I don't
whole
know
new
what to
chunk
tell
that I
you.
have to write. Gosh, you threw my material into the garbage can.
Yeah.
And what kind of timeless things are making their way into your act?
Um, I mean, I do like political stuff, but I try not to be too heavy because I'm not trying to piss off anybody in the room. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
not trying to attack Republicans as a whole. There are a handful of very specific ones that I would love to make cry on, but you know what I mean? But if you're in there, you know what I mean? It's not like a general attack. So I try not to do too many political stuff. I don't do loads of pop culture. I did try to do, I was thinking about doing a Star Wars bit because I found out that Christopher Walken was almost cast as Han Solo,
Yes.
which is wild.
Yes.
And Jodie Foster was almost cast as Leia, which is also, I'm like, I mean, she never would have kissed Luke, that's for sure. Um,
She's a great actress. I wouldn't put anything past her. And so
yeah,
your bit would your bit have involved impressions of Christopher Walken or no?
yeah, and I was really working on it, and then I
You're working on the impression.
yeah. And then I was like, I think this is a bit of a lost cause, and I need to learn when to let this go.
Yeah, there's some good impressions of Christopher Walken out there, but if you
There's
could,
some really good ones.
yeah, maybe even Jodie Foster too. But I mean, we'll keep track of all this stuff. I follow you on Twitter and Instagram. You're Alysia Hush, which is Alysia, Alysia Hush, and it says middle school mean girl, only gayer.
Yeah.
And are you
Did I
talking?
say that?
Yeah. Do you not know that that's what the first and last thing people take away from your Twitter account is middle
I
school mean girl, only gayer.
I remember that. I didn't know that that was still up there. That was a friend actually said that to me. She was like, "You're like a middle school mean girl, but gayer." And I was like, "That is actually me if I was a one-dimensional character."
Well, I love that so much because yeah, like Mean Girls, I suppose it's like a Lifetime movie. There probably was a middle school mean girl in there, but and maybe even gayer. Like could you be in a Lifetime movie as a mean girl who's gay?
Could I do it? Absolutely. Could Lifetime pull it off? Probably not.
Only if Alicia Hush was writing for them, and we will because she's
Yeah, and also could pass for a middle schooler.
Dude, I love that. I'm looking at your pictures right now. You can pass. You can totally pass for a middle schooler.
Thank you so much.
Well, Alicia Hush
That's what I'm going to put on my Twitter now. Could pass for a middle schooler.
in a Lifetime movie.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, Alicia Hush, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.